Today, we're going to tackle something that affects every single one of us, but we almost never really stop to think about it. We're going on an investigation, not just into finance, but into time itself. We're going to talk about interest, what we're calling the price of time.
You know that feeling like you're on a treadmill, and no matter how fast you run, the speed just keeps ticking up? You work harder, you get a raise, but your student debt, your mortgage, your credit card balance, somehow they seem to be running even faster. You just can't get ahead.
And you'd be forgiven for thinking this is just a modern problem, right? A product of our crazy 21st century economy. But what if I told you the real reason for that feeling is ancient?
In fact, it's part of a huge 3,000-year-old argument, one that's involved some of the greatest thinkers, philosophers, and revolutionaries in all of human history.
And here's the kicker. Whether you know it or not, you are smack dab in the middle of this ancient debate. Every single time you swipe a credit card or pay your mortgage, you're taking a side. So let's figure out what this argument is all about and which side you're really on.
So let's treat this like a crime scene investigation. The victim? You could call it financial morality. And the main piece of evidence is a concept that has totally changed its identity over the years.
Okay, look at this. On the left, we have the word usury. For most of human history, that's what they called charging any money on a loan. And it wasn't just frowned upon, it was seen as a deep moral crime. On the right, we have interest. It's the exact same thing, but today we call it the engine of the entire global economy. So how in the world did a mortal sin become business as usual? To figure that out, we've got to call our first witnesses to the stand.
So let's hop in our time machine and go way back to ancient Greece. We're going to hear the original case against charging interest. And you might be surprised. The argument is actually really simple and pretty profound. This right here is Aristotle's big idea. He said money is barren. Think about it. It's just a tool, like a yardstick. Its only job is to measure values so we can trade things fairly. The idea that this lifeless metal coin could magically give birth to more coins all by itself, well, to him, that was just unnatural. A complete perversion of what money was for.
This analogy makes it crystal clear. Let's say I lend you a bag of seeds. Those seeds are naturally productive, right? They grow into a crop. If a drought hits and the crop fails, well, we both lose out. The risk is shared between us. But lending barren money? The ancients said that's totally different. The money itself doesn't create anything. And if your business fails, the lender doesn't just want his money back, he wants it back, plus his cut. Suddenly, all the risk is dumped squarely on you.
And the theologians who came later, they took it a step further. They asked, when you charge interest, what are you actually selling? The only thing that passes is time. And since time was believed to belong only to God or to nature itself, selling it was the ultimate form of theft. It was literally a crime against heaven and earth. Okay, so if interest was a crime against God for thousands of years, what on earth happened? Well, what happened was one of the most successful rebranding campaigns in human history.
I mean, just look at this timeline. For centuries, it's a moral crime. In the Middle Ages, Dante literally puts usurers in the seventh circle of hell, one of the worst spots. But then, the world changes. The Industrial Revolution kicks off, and you need huge piles of cash to build factories and railroads. And just like that, the great sin becomes an essential service.
So, how did they pull it off? How did they justify it? Two big arguments came to the forefront. First, risk. The lender might not get paid back, so they deserve a little extra for taking that chance. Fair enough. Second, opportunity cost. The lender could have done something else with that money, so you have to pay them for the inconvenience of waiting. See what happened? The conversation shifted completely from morality to mechanics.
And this, right here, is the absolute key. This was the moment we all decided that capital, just a pile of money, deserved to earn a wage, just like a person who sweats and toils for a living. Once that idea took root, our entire modern financial world was born. But in solving the problem of funding industry, we might have accidentally unleashed a silent predator.
So what is this predator? In our crime scene investigation, this is the murder weapon. And it's not a philosophy, it's not an opinion, it's just cold, hard math.
Here it is. This is the fundamental mismatch that gets almost everyone. Our brains are wired to think in straight lines. It's called linear thinking. You know, I work 1 hour, I get paid $10. I work 2 hours, I get $20. Simple. But compound interest doesn't work that way. It grows exponentially. It curves upwards, slowly at first, and then almost vertically. And that gap between how our brains think debt works and how it actually works, that's the trap. Let's look at a real-world example. A bank can borrow money from the government for, say, 4%. That's their cost. But then they turn around and lend that same money to you on a credit card for 24%. That huge gap between the bars, that spread, isn't just about covering risk. Our source material calls it an extraction of value, a tax on not having money, all made possible because of that exponential trap.
And believe me, it can get way, way worse. This number, that's a pretty typical annual percentage rate for a payday loan. At 400%, we're not talking about a service anymore. This is what one of our sources calls financial cannibalism. It's a system designed from the ground up to make sure the borrower can never, ever escape.
So let's bring this all home. What does this 3,000-year-old fight mean for you today, trying to make a living? Well, this is where the ancient philosophy and the modern math collide with your bank account.
The economist Thomas Piketty boiled it down to this incredibly simple but powerful formula. R is greater than G. So R is the rate of return on capital. That's money made from owning things, stocks, real estate, and yes, interest. G is the rate of economic growth. That's money made from doing things, working a job, producing goods. The formula simply states a fact. The money made from owning stuff grows faster than the money made from working.
This chart shows you the problem perfectly. If you make most of your money from a paycheck, that's the G bar, you're basically on the slow escalator. If you make most of your money from your existing wealth, the R bar, you're on the express elevator to the top. Over time, that gap between the two just gets wider and wider. This is the math behind that feeling that you can't get ahead no matter how hard you work.
And the end result of this math is pretty stark. It creates a system that looks, well, a lot like the old feudal system. You have a class of asset lords whose wealth just compounds all by itself, and a growing class of debt serfs whose labor increasingly goes to service the debts owed to those lords. Now, is this just the way it has to be? Well, maybe not. We're starting to see some interesting cracks in the system. Things like Islamic finance, which go back to the old idea of sharing risk instead of just transferring it. And you have the wild world of DeFi, which is basically a massive experiment trying to get rid of the powerful middlemen altogether. The point is, that 3,000-year-old argument, it is far from over.
So the next time you open your credit card statement, I want you to see it differently. Don't just see the numbers. Realize that what you're holding in your hands is the conclusion of a 3,000-year-old argument about fairness, about nature, about the very purpose of money. And as things stand right now, the math is winning.